All right, all right, all right. It's Wednesday, which means it's time for Blast and a Half. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you, LinkedIn family. And thank you, everyone who is going to start to put their questions about what is the biggest leadership challenge that you're facing right now. But you know how big I am on intros. And so I want you to know that you're about to meet a very special guy. I refer to this guy as Big Shoulders because even though he wears things so much like a loose garment, this guy carries a lot of weight in the world of podcasting. And for me, certainly, and what you're going to find out in the world of leadership. Not only did he work at Tesla and have direct access to Elon Musk, but this guy is also showing up for leadership challenges like his son's baseball team. And as an avid baseball lover, this guy is showing up and doing the deal day in and day out. His company, Podify, produces amazing podcasts for many celebrity guests, and he's going to tell you more about that, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But the point is that he has been all over LinkedIn and outside of LinkedIn. He even produced his own documentary film, which I watched, and it was pretty fun. So I want you to meet Billy Samoa Saleebey. And Billy, I love your backstory about how you were named. And I also just absolutely adore you and your cut to the chase thinking around the topic that we're talking about today, which is leadership. And so I'm so glad you're here. And by the way, Billy's a coffee newbie. He just started drinking, which that's a little unknown fact. Like, this is a novelty for him. And you know, he doesn't come as a coffee veteran. He comes as a coffee newbie. So here's to you, Billy. I know you're going to have your cup a little bit later. So
cheers.
Cheers. So Billy, as we're getting started, what I really, really, really want to know, because you are so concise and so clear on leadership and what it means and what it takes, you talk a lot about, you know, the transformational insights. In fact, your podcast, Inside Out, is Insights Out, is all about insights. So before we even go super deep into leadership, talk to us about what is a valuable insight, because I mean, we could have brain farts all day long. So tell me what a real insight is.
Yeah, thanks. Wow, what an intro. I don't even know what to say, but thank you, and super excited to be here on the show with you to talk about my favorite topic, leadership, insights, and anywhere else we're going to go, I'm sure will be something that is a topic that I want to talk about. Coffee is a new love of mine, and you were kind enough to send me some of your favorite coffee. So I've already finished that, and I'm about to order from that same company again because of the fact that I loved it so much. But I think to your question, when we think about insights, let's first talk about why and when we have them, and why and when we have insights that matter. And most of the time we go through life and we are on autopilot. We go through life existing, and we live basically to respond to the situation we're in through our subconscious mind. But when we actually have an insight, it's when we're really ready to observe something happening in our lives that we want to take note of, and we have almost like an epiphany. Usually this happens when our mind is quiet. And so the reason why that happens is that our prefrontal cortex, which is this little part of our brain right behind our forehead, and it's the executive functioning part of our brain, it's overused. It's I study this guy named David Rock, who said if you were to equate it to the U.S. economy, the prefrontal cortex would be the change in your pocket, and the entire U.S. economy would be the rest of your brain, right? And so that's the difference in size. And the ability for it to function is minimized because it's constantly doing things, making decisions on life in general, because we're go, 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 go all the time. And we have so much input, so many things we're processing that we don't give this prefrontal cortex, part of our brain, the time for it to process and think. But have you ever noticed when you take a shower, you go for a walk, you go to the bathroom, you do something where even at the gym where you're not thinking as much, all of a sudden this idea happens, this epiphany, this moment of insight occurs. And it's key to take those moments and really leverage them to make life choices and decisions that will help drive transformation. You talk about transformational insights. Well, transformation happens when action happens. Transformation doesn't happen when we just think. So if we have this insight, but then we go about our lives, chances are it's not going to actually move the needle. So that's what a transformational insight is. And transformational insight is when we quiet our mind, give our prefrontal cortex a chance to think, and give yourself, you figure out what will allow that to happen more frequently, and then listen and tune into those moments and determine how you can take action on that insight.
Okay. So is it safe to say that leaders are people who actually take action on transformational insights?
Well, I think leadership comes down to when someone else is worth following. And somebody that is worth following often does two things really, really well. The first thing they do is they make good decisions. And the second thing they do is they have good interactions. So, and I didn't invent this, by the way. When I was doing leadership development at Solar City and then at Tesla, I studied this and I said, okay, what are the things that leaders do in common? And I came across this concept that talked about fellowship and talked about this idea of the decisions you make and the interactions you have. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, that makes perfect sense. Because if you were to think about historically, well, if we were on the plains, right, and we were fending for our lives, we were afraid we were going to get eaten by some animal, I would follow you if I believed that the decisions you made were going to protect me, and that if the interactions you and I had gave me the trust that you're the right person to follow. And now here we are in today's world where that's not the case, but it still exists in the way in which we operate, that we want people who we believe will make the right decisions and who we believe and who we have the right kind of interactions with. So to your question, yes, I think in most cases, people who have transformational insights end up making very, very good decisions and also tend to have good interactions because they may have an insight like, ooh, this person on my team needs to hear from me in this way because they operate this way, right? Everybody's an individual. And so we shouldn't treat people the same. We shouldn't lead or manage people the same. And if you are the type of person who listens to those moments of insight and understands how to pick out a moment where something's going to give you guidance, you're going to make the right decisions. Those decisions will often lead to the positive interactions that you want to have.
So this is seemingly what everybody thinks that they have, right? I have good relationships, or maybe they don't, or my team likes me, or my team doesn't like me. But what does, because we're talking also about, you can work really, 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 really hard, and that doesn't guarantee you're going to be a leader, right? And so the distinctions that you're making here are in some cases very dramatic and also very nuanced, right? Being a great leader also entails a lot of pieces that require some subtle cues. And you and I know from past conversations, have really had a lot of focus on EQ, right? And some of those nuances, we think that we might be good leaders because we're rah, but when it comes to potentially, interacting with people or interrupting, one of my biggest challenges for me, because I get so excited and it's something so important to say that
Right.
sometimes I cut people off. So I think that there's, working hard and playing full out that we set up this live to discuss. They're certainly not the same thing. And I just want to have you explain what your term playing all in or full out really means. Tell us about that.
I think fundamentally, playing full out is about keeping your energy high and your focus clear. It's about keeping your energy high and your focus clear. So are you giving yourself 100% to what it is that you're supposed to be doing at that moment? Because what happens all too often is we give 80%, 60%, 50%, and then we're distracted by the remaining 30, 40%, right? And so I think, and this is a through line that you'll hear in a lot of the things that I study, it's how clear are we on what it is that we're supposed to be doing? And constantly think about what is the thing that you should be doing, and what are the things that are getting in the way of that. And then the other thing that I think about when I think about playing full out is, what are the things that I'm afraid to do, that I am scared to do, that I should be doing? Because our brain is trying to keep us safe. It's trying to put us out of harm's way. So if you're afraid of something, if something's intimidating you, chances are that's the thing you should run toward. Not in all cases, but in some cases. And so with that, I think the biggest challenge that we have is the stories that we tell ourselves, both internally and externally. So what I mean by that is our brain's constantly telling ourselves a million different stories. Some of those things we actually speak. We actually say out loud. And when we say it out loud, it's even more of a directional pull to where we're going. And so if that story is, oh, I can't do this because, or I shouldn't do this because, we are telling ourselves, our brain doesn't know the difference between a joke, between
the brain will always be right.
Yeah, the brain's going to take this as direction. Our brain is like a supercomputer. And if we're telling ourselves that, well, we're rationalizing why we shouldn't do something or couldn't do something or why it's not the right time, our brain is saying, okay, I shouldn't do this now. Conversely, if we think about the words that we say and how we say them, we can actually start to make greater progress towards this idea of playing full out and whatever it is that we should be doing. Because we could be playing full out, but doing it in the wrong area. Or we think we're playing full out because we've given ourselves permission to play at 60% and we're telling ourselves it's full out, but it's not actually full out. So when we have clarity of focus and our energy behind that focus, that's when we begin to play full out.
Yeah, this is like, I had to put this banner up because I think this could be my next tattoo. Energy high, focus clear, is really, I mean, it's simple. And now go try it. So, there's a lot of shiny objects that get in our way. And energy high, I cannot tell you how much this is a game changer, especially in the world of job seeking. Sometimes I'll get on the phone with somebody, a prospect or somebody, and I could tell them within the first 30 seconds, where their energy level is. Is this an attraction or a detraction? Can I spot that issue that may be turning people away from networking? And that doesn't mean being hyper, right? Like just because you're not like ricocheting off the walls doesn't mean you don't come with good energy. So find yours. Find what that is for you. I mean, don't necessarily borrow somebody else's energy, right? Because then it's completely inauthentic. But, that also means that you need to show up to conversations with some other signals that elicit that you're paying attention and that you have energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
100%.
answering your phone like this is a dead we won't do that. So I really want to talk about a combined shared topic that we have. And you have said in the presentation that you shared at a recent mastermind that we both attended in Florida, where I got to know the Billy, was about what leaders do that gives them not only the advantage, but also allows them to hold their power.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a common thread I talk about all the time, because I listen to people tell their stories and they'll say, oh, I have 20 years of experience. I'm a marketing ninja. Tell us what that thing is. Tell us, dispel the myth, man.
Well, I think there are so many different things that can be said about this, but one thing stands out more than any other, and that is the ability to solve world-class problems. That's really fundamentally what I think separates people who are doing ordinary things from people who are doing extraordinary things. If you look at Elon Musk, to your introduction, I had the opportunity to be a part of Tesla and observe firsthand what a visionary leader does. At his core strength is problem solving. That's it. He is able to dissect what problems exist and can quickly come up with solutions. And I think, and I'll share this briefly, if you haven't yet studied this idea of first principles thinking, this could be a mind-blowing change to the way in which you operate.
I wouldn't have you here if you didn't, deliver mind-bending, blowing insight.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. And so, when we think about first principles thinking, I think the key part of it is we as human beings have assumptions about just about everything. We assume something needs to be like something else because it already exists, right? A car, for example, already existed before Tesla came around. Yeah, Elon didn't say, I'm going to take what exists already and then just incrementally make some improvements based upon what already existed. He calls it reasoning by analogy, which he suggests is the wrong way to go about doing it. You don't want to say, cars exist, I'm going to make it a little bit better. Instead, what he says, if cars didn't exist, how would they be built from the ground up, assuming the only limitation we have is the laws of nature that we have no control over, physics, that sort of thing, right? And so here's a quick framework. I know you like framework. So if you're going to solve a problem, the first thing you need to do is actually identify the problem. Einstein says if he had 55 minutes or if he had an hour to think about a problem, to solve a problem, he'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes solving the problem, right? So that's the way he approaches it. So if we identify the problem first, second, we need to write out every assumption we have to systematically validate if they're 100% true or if they're not really true. So in Elon's case, maybe he would say battery packs are very expensive and that's just the way they're always going to be, for vehicles. They make it impossible for electric vehicles to work. Historically, the cost has been so high that there's just no way it's going to work. Well, we know that's not the case. So step 3, after you've written down these assumptions, is break down what it is that you can do to overcome these assumptions and literally write down, okay, so we know, for example, that a battery is made of cobalt and nickel and aluminum and carbon and all the different other parts of a battery. And we could then say to ourselves, what are the costs of these things on the market value of these things? Is there a way to lower those costs? Is there a way to produce at scale? Can we build a gigafactory like he has to produce these batteries at a much lower cost, right? And he did the same thing with SpaceX. So I won't go into all the detail, but point being is he doesn't just assume because these batteries have always been expensive, that they're going to continue to be expensive. He says, well, what can we do to lower the cost? Step 4 is ask powerful questions and understand what you already believe to be true as assumptions, how you can alter those beliefs that you've had and change them so that you can do step 5, which is to actually put together a plan of action to solve that problem, right? And so that's a quick framework for you. I think all of it comes from a very, very clear foundation of removing the barriers that you place in front of yourself because you have pre-existing ideas and assumptions of what is or what should be or what could be, instead of saying, well, I'm just looking at it through this narrow lens that is filtered by my own previous inputs, not acknowledging the fact that there's also another way you could go about doing it.
Right. So I'm going to go back and repeat these pieces of the framework. 1, think about the problem, and not in a fly-by-night kind of way, right? Marinate on it. Go deep. One of the things, one of my coaches says, 12 inches deep, not 1 inch 12 times. So go deep and go deep. Write out your assumptions, all of the things that you believe, the roadblocks that are getting in the way, and other assumptions too, because not every assumption is a roadblock. Break down what you can do to overcome these assumptions. Now, these is like genius for people who are in career transition. Because we set up all these things. Oh my God, I have ageism. I have this, I have that. Totally. All these reasons why it's going to take so long. No one's hiring right now. Lots of people are being laid off. Goodbye. Last one, ask powerful questions. And just to get the Billy rub on this, what's a powerful question? What's an unpowerful or weak question?
Yeah, you and I talked about this when we met each other in person, and then just prior to the call here today. And this applies across the board. It could be a question that's a problem-solving question. It could be a question that you ask in an interview. It could be a question that you are asking when you are being interviewed, right? Or when you're conducting an interview. I think rooted in solid questions is solid research. Research equals respect.
God. God.
You respect the problem when you do the right research. You respect the guest when you do the right amount of research. You respect the hiring manager or the recruiter when you do the right research. So if you want to ask an amazing question, you got to do amazing research. And it'll take time to get to that point where you're going to ask that right question. So even though the question may be one sentence, it may take 1 hour to get to that one question sentence. It may take 15 minutes. I'm not saying it has to take an hour, right. But you need to do the legwork on your end so that you get to a point where you can ask the right questions. As a podcaster, I mean, every question I ask is rooted in research. And if you don't take the time to do that, you're going to get a question that may not land. It can do the exact opposite of what you want. It can counteract the goal or intention you have, because what it can do is it can reduce the credibility, and it could take you out of the equation. It can make you look worse than if you didn't ask the question at all. So I think a great question always has the research behind it.
Thank you. I know from speaking with you, about 5 hours or so of research, maybe more, maybe less. But as a benchmark, you have a guest coming on your show, you're doing the deep dive. And then lastly, we talked about plan of action. I do want to address some of these comments here, which are coming in. So this one, wow, what a juicy question. Michelle Norton. Billy, have you heard of Green IP Core? They are selling a chip that has default autocorrection logic that allows it to continue functioning without interrupting the worksheet. It doesn't reboot. It consumes less power than regular chips, except when it is migrating a logic error. I met the co-founder on LinkedIn and want to get this invention in front of the autonomous industry, aerospace, self-driving. I am not doing this for profit. So I don't know if this is a question, but we're actually going to. Thanks for that, Michelle and Billy. Now you get to go research something new. Green.
Yeah, I actually don't know about it, but I think it's amazing, and the developments that are happening in the AI world, machine learning. I mean, it is mind blowing, and to me, the thing that I am so curious about is how does this help humanity solve the problems that we need to solve? So to me, that's really what all of this is rooted in, whether there be health problems, existential problems, climate crisis, things of that nature. How do these things accelerate our path to get to solutions? And to me, that's what's most important.
Awesome. So we also have a shout out from the one and only, the guy, my Superman, your Superman, the LinkedIn guru. I've always liked this quote: true leaders don't create followers, they create more leaders. Tom Peters. I totally love that. Love that.
Yeah.
Kirsten Stewart loves this. Barbara West, building trust through your interactions with your team members is so important. It's the foundation. Authenticity, empathy, listening, and following through on what you say will do are just some of the things that have worked for me. Here.
Let me just say one thing on that. And this is, your interactions are always, or should always be, unique to the people who you're having the interaction with. Now, if it's a group of people, of course, that's group dynamics. It's going to be a group. But if it's an individual, really think about the type of interaction that will mean the most to that person. Because if you treat your leadership role as a cookie cutter, same approach, regardless of the other human being, it may work for a few people, but it won't work for everybody. Right. And so the bigger your team and the more interactions you have with different people, you should really be mindful and thoughtful about what type of interaction will be important for that person. And the EQ that you have, your emotional intelligence, which is your awareness of your own emotion and the emotion of those around you, and the interplay of all of that, that's going to play a pivotal role, an important role in how you ultimately navigate and steer yourself in those interactions.
100%. So if you are starting a new position, your best relationship suggestion from me is invest the time in coffee and get to know these people. What makes them tick. Forget about their assignments for a little bit. Invest in them. One of the things I personally do when I have a new client is I have a session and I want to know how they learn. I want you to tell me how you learn. Do you like being called on? Do you not like being called on? Tell me what it is that accelerates your learning and what slows it down. Because I need to be able to calibrate, because some people are like, oh no, I'm not going to network. I hate networking. Don't ever make me network, and so there's a barrier there. Some people are the exact opposite. So there's lots of different things that we need to find out about the people that we're interacting with. What jazzes them up, and make that a priority for you. Not just like, oh yeah, they're a nice person, I like what they're doing, here's their role in the organization. Why? Why are they so gifted at this? What excites them about it? So, we have, yay, Nikki. So happy to see you. Thank you for showing up. Hi, friends. Lauren and Billy are the best. Thanks. You too. And then tailoring leadership to individuals is a great point. And also from the amazing Claudia Paradise, who could resist that name, right? Yes, how do we stop the brain, though? Eckhart Tolle, The Power of Now, shows you how to stop your brain from spinning and spinning and spinning. That frontal lobe that you talked about, right? So we're going to wrap up in a few minutes, but I can't leave this conversation, and I don't want you to leave this one without really touching on the biggest mistake that people that people don't do in leadership. I know we've talked about problem solving, we've talked to some degree about EQ, we've talked about playing all out, but what other things might we be missing that we need to address that in a leadership role? And just by the way, that doesn't mean you're senior, right? A leader isn't somebody who owns a title, gets paid a lot of money, running a huge team, because as you and I both know, right? Leaders today look very, very, very different. One of our favorite leaders is about half our age.
That's right. Yeah. So what is the biggest mistake? Well, okay. It's always hard to say biggest because there are so many different things that can happen. But I'll tell you,
to top of mind for you.
The thing that comes to top of mind is not allowing feedback to be part of the culture of your company. And you and I have talked about this before. And I mentioned David Rock, who studies this, and he shared some things on this that really, really struck a chord. He goes, and I'm paraphrasing, but great companies know how to create a culture of feedback. And so the reason why that's important is that most people are allergic to feedback in the way that it's typically given through a performance management strategy or just unsolicited feedback where you're just like bombarded with critique. Now, you may think instinctually that you somehow need to fix the giver of feedback, but this isn't about fixing the giver of feedback. Instead, it's about empowering the asker of feedback. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is people who give feedback in your organization should be embraced and elevated and encouraged to continue to ask for feedback. When you ask for feedback, when you create this culture where everybody's asking for feedback, you're welcoming that feedback in. When you're given feedback unsolicited and it's sort of like, or it's a planned feedback session where you know you're going in and it's like, you're almost like bracing for it. It's very tense. It's very stressful. But when you're the one who's going out and it's just common, it happens as part of the routine of the day to day. You may not ask every day, but as much as possible, you say, can you give me some feedback? Then you're changing the dynamic of the way the feedback is both given and received. And that's when you start to see the type of movement that an organization needs to develop and be nimble enough to make serious and significant change. So I'd say this is both probably the biggest mistake, but also the biggest lesson that I learned when I worked at Tesla was this idea behind the importance of feedback and how the best organizations in the world embrace this environment where they empower the asker of feedback.
And so what could anyone coming out of this live do as an exercise to practice and or improve on being the asker?
So I think the first thing you need to do is observe. And this goes with almost anything. Observe what's happening current state. So observe it. When is feedback given? When is it not given? How is it given? And really, especially observe the way people don't like to get feedback, because you're gonna be, once you're in tune with it and you observe it, you're gonna realize how much feedback's being given at the wrong time. And so once you've determined that, you can start to get a better idea of when the right time to do it is. But as far as action item and when somebody should do it, you model the behavior you want others to have. So if you want other people to ask for feedback, you got to ask for feedback yourself. And make sure you do it in a way where you are almost prescriptive in the type of feedback that you want. Hey, I've sent this email to this client. Wondered if you could take a look at it. Here's some things that I'm looking for feedback on. And you give very hyper specific direction instead of just give me feedback very, very vaguely. you're now asking for very specific feedback about a very specific thing and for a very, very specific reason. And it feels less threatening because you're asking for it and you want them to give you the feedback on this very isolated thing. And the more you do that, the more they're going to see you doing it and they're going to reciprocate. It's a two-way street. And the more you give or the more you ask for feedback, the more they're going to accept that that's the norm.
Right. So model, of course, observe, model. I've seen lots of bad examples of feedback, just the way Needy was talking about here in the comment, right? You're running a risk if you don't do this well of throwing up all the defenses.
That's right.
If people hear feedback and they're like, oh no, I'm going to the principal's office.
Totally.
Or what you described, which is that culture of feedback where it's much more fluid and it's happening in both directions. Right? You're not just the giver, and let me, do things according to my world, but you're also finding out what other people, how they're perceiving you, other ways that you can improve, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that Nitty's here, and yeah, this fight or flight response kicks in, and if you're triggered by this feedback, you may not be able to hear it because you're in this mode of do I defend myself? Am I going to lose my job? Like all these different things start going in your mind, and you become defensive. And then if you're defensive, you're not on receive mode. You're on defend mode. And when you're in defend mode, you're less likely to embrace and take action on the feedback because it may not even get heard. It may just be your brain is not ripe for the receptors aren't there in the same way.
Absolutely. So now that we're coming, unfortunately, to the end, what I do want you to do is please, aside from LinkedIn, because we can all find you on LinkedIn. We're on LinkedIn, right? Tell us what is happening in your world of Podify. What's coming up? What should we be listening to? Be it you guys, I know some behind the scenes things that are happening, but who else are some of the podcasts that you work with and where can we tune in?
Love it. Well, first, Lauren, as expected, what a delightful conversation. And you're such an amazing leader and human being and friend and somebody that I greatly admire and deeply respect. And everything that you do, you are an all around badass and just such an amazing person. And I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to learn from you every single time we talk. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. I'm truly, truly honored to have you in my life. So thank you. And yeah, I mean, look, for anybody that wants, I wore my shirt. I had it covered up. I didn't want to be a billboard.
Come on. No. Be a billboard.
There we go. Podify. But yeah, you go to podify.com, podify.com. On the site, you could check out some of the shows that we do. We're working with Dr. Laura Berman on the language of love. We have a great mental health podcast. We have a show on plant medicine that's coming out. We have a show on communication with Ravi Rajani. So many great shows. We have so many shows that I'm so passionate about because they do something impactful for the world, right? So Ravi's show is The Influential Communicator, and he's active here on LinkedIn. And to me, ultimately, the thing that gets me excited is the medium of communication, and especially audio communication in an intimate. You hear somebody speak and you can almost get to know them through the vibration and sound of their voice and learn something and grow and maybe gain an insight as a result of being part of this journey that you could then apply in your life and then have those transformations. It's just such a magical world that we live in today where information could be passed and disseminated in such a quick manner that it's life-changing and world-changing at the same time. And so, if you're somebody that is a podcaster, or if you know a podcaster, by all means, reach out, let me know. You could schedule a session if you want to do a strategy call with me. Happy to do that. And, but yeah, you can also find me here on LinkedIn as well, and always open to meeting new people, because I'm a people person, but B, this is in my entire life, the one thing I could say I know is true is that life is about the connections that we make. And not just connections because it's going to get me something, but connections because it's going to fill my heart with love and hopefully fill the other person's heart with love as well. So I look forward to meeting new people.
That's going to happen. And we're going to sign off in a minute, but I'm going to give you the best Billy tip that I got from Billy.
Oh, no. Okay.
Everyone can do this as a way of facilitating connection, right? Because you and I are like very much aligned in our priorities and relationships being the number one thing, right? Take out your phone. Right? You didn't think I was going to pop this one. Take out your phone and go to the very end of your messages, all the way down at the bottom. Start there and send that person, then the next, then the next. A voice note, a text message with something to bring a smile to their face. All of these things, while they sound like, I mean, it could take like 5-10 minutes. That's the easiest way to nurture your contacts is just keep them rotating. And as our dearest friend Brendan says, you know, evaluate the people who are pouring into you and then make sure you are pouring back into them. So that's your value list. So please try that today. I'm going to be sending some myself because I can't be a leader if I'm not leading and doing what I'm asking you guys to do. Billy Samoa Saleebey, it's the biggest love ever. I am so grateful. Thank you for coming on the show. Thank you for waking up early. And
of course. I will always wake up. This is now it's a common theme since the last time we hung out. We were both waking up super, super early, thanks to Brendan and Vamsi. But yes, of course, I will wake up early for you. It's not that early. It's still, you know, it could be worse. It could be, you know, 3:30 in the morning, 3:30 or 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. So I actually did wake up at 3:30. I was so excited. I was like, oh, it's not time yet. So I woke up earlier than I expected. So it's been an awesome and fun conversation. I'm glad that you brought that out. The one thing I'll say is when you send these messages, send it from the heart. Don't send it with an ulterior motive. Don't send it with like, oh, this person's going to get me business or this. Send it and let them know, hey, I was thinking about you. Because you were thinking about them. You're thinking about them as you write this. And you know, or whatever, something that's going to make them laugh or make them, you know, something. It's a compliment goes a long way. Like I miss you. I miss our conversations, or remind them of something funny. Or maybe it's not somebody that you know really, really well. It could be a weak or dormant tie, right? Maybe somebody that you knew at one point in your life to be, hey, it's a long time. How have you been? I thought of you and I wanted to reach out and check in and see how you're doing. Nothing more than that. You know, you kind of want to let them know that there's not something else. You're not like a business opportunity or something like that, because some people can be
no urgency here. Like
you got it. That's right. No urgency, no rush. Just wanted to check in and see how you're doing. It's been a long time, because then people's guard's down, right? Unfortunately, we live in a world where the wall can be kind of high, because people do get bombarded with sales calls and this and that, and they may have the wrong idea, and you just want to set their wall lower. That's it.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Lauren.
And Billy, hang around for a minute or two afterwards. We'll have some coffee.
Thanks. All right. Sounds good.